do a recap of our first module and quickly go through and fresh our minds with what is SLDs. Starting with the concept of neurodiversity, we very well understand by this time that neurodiversity is an umbrella under which comes the diverse ways in which people's brain function, and under the same we have specific learning disabilities. These are inclusive of dyslexia, dyscalculia, dyspraxia and dysgraphia. We have to remember that people with specific learning disabilities will have average or above average IQ. It's a lifelong condition and therefore is formally recognized as a disability. It can run in families, and this is something that one cannot be cured of but eventually learns to manage better. This is also an invisible disability, and you can only use a psychometric analysis to be able to diagnose a person with this. We'll focus on how a lot of accommodations and assistive technology can help these people grow. This is, as we see, as common as 1 in 5. Now we need to understand that how do these specific learning disabilities manifest, beginning with dyslexia. As you see on your screen right now is a simulation of how a written text might come across for a person with dyslexia. It is a struggle with processing language. It can impact your reading, writing, spelling. It's one of the most common. It's almost 80% prevalent in people with specific learning disabilities, and you often interchange the word dyslexia with specific learning disabilities. Moving on, we have dyscalculia, which is the struggle with maths, and it is not the fear of maths. So people with dyscalculia will often struggle with any form of arithmetic information, calculating, computing. This might also further come across as a difficulty in able to understand time, distance as a unit. It's almost present in 5% of the overall population. Talking about dysgraphia, dysgraphia is your struggle with fine motor skills, which manifests and come across in your handwriting, buttoning, tying shoelaces. Here we'll talk about the 3 aspects of dyslexic struggles, as we discussed previously, that any individual will show struggles across all these 3 subsets, which is academics, emotional well-being and life skills. You need to understand that struggles independently will always show in one or the other subsets for a lot of students, but when there is one or more struggle in all these 3 put together, you know your student is at a higher risk of having a specific learning disability. We now need to understand that specific learning disabilities go beyond the processing of language issue or the struggle with maths or fine motor skills. In day-to-day life, you will see that this will impact the executive functioning of our students. These will be the students who will show wonderful performance in classrooms, and there's going to be a gap in their oral and written performance. They will show poor self-esteem issues because self-advocating is not something that comes very easy. They will face memory challenges, can easily forget tasks and deadlines. They will also show slow processing as one of the struggles, as it takes them time to read something and comprehend. They're sensitive to overstimulation, and more than often they'll face a lot of difficulties in planning spectrum of tasks. Now we have to understand what is screening and identification. RPWD Act 2016 clearly reads out diagnosis of SLD can only happen when a child is in or after 3rd grade or 8 years of age, whichever comes earlier. While formal diagnosis can be done only after 8 years of age, screening process can be taken as early in the childhood. This makes it very easy to give the right accommodation to our students by doing early identification of a student who might be at a risk of a specific learning disability. Talking about diagnosis of SLD requires either a pediatrician, a psychiatrist, a pediatric neurologist, or a clinical or a rehabilitation psychologist. Now you have to understand it's a 3-step process, where in the very first step you try to eliminate any kind of impairment related to your hearing and visual skills. The second will be understanding what is the IQ. Once we have established the fact that the IQ is above average, we go to the 3rd step, which helps us do a psychometric analysis to diagnose specific learning disabilities. Now we need to understand that every disability recognized under the RPWD Act needs to be benchmarked at 40% during the diagnosis. Once that is confirmed, a person has the right to any sort of concession or accommodation in a government or a government-aided institute. Dyslexics are very resilient, and with the right support they find ways to cope and success. In the following video, we'll understand the same.
COVID was one of our early entrants into higher education. Yes, significant difficulties with reading and writing. The admissions committee at the college was worried whether he would be able to manage the multiple flight of stairs to his classroom. But in reality, he actually found it difficult to navigate new schedules, new systems, keeping up with his lectures, getting to his classroom on time, finding his classroom, making new friends. The list was endless. The first day he went to college, he went to the library to get his library cards, and he was pulled up for his illegible handwriting with the comment, "This is what happens when we have to fulfill quotas in admission." Not surprisingly, Rohit struggled through the first term. He was quite miserable. He spent as little time as possible at college, and it was only regular, intensive counseling that kept him on track. His exams came along, the first term exams, and he had discovered that he'd been given extra time to finish his papers, but the seat in the hall had to be vacated because the next exam was scheduled immediately after. And he was describing this to his counselor. He says, I felt like a worm. Everybody was standing in the corridor and discussing what to do with me. The principal came along and asked what was going on. And he took a different view. He pulled up the staff for not having made adequate arrangements. And he took Rohit with him. I'm going to describe this in his own words, which he told us about later. He said, "Ma'am, he took me to his own office. He sat me down at his desk. He made space there for me. And he told me to finish my paper, take as long as I wanted. And he said, I'm sitting outside making phone calls. Don't worry, nobody's going to disturb you here." What a validation. This validation really changed his life at college. Suddenly, he was able to advocate for himself. He dived into campus activities, took part, joined some clubs. Ironically, in his last year at college, he took over a student newsletter as editor. And he made so many changes and made it so innovative that it won several awards.
In the previous video, we understood that how if we are able to give the right kind of support, our students will always move towards the path of success. Further understanding that dyslexia as a disability has been powering our life, a lot of things that you see on your screen right now have been inventions of people with dyslexia, whether it be telephones, light bulbs, plane, our laptops, phones, and other than just being able to power our life, they're also generating a lot of employment. 40% of the self-made millionaires are dyslexic, and these are few of the brands that you see right now which have been the invention of people with dyslexia. We know the fact that dyslexic thinking is pushing us forward, which gets us to the question that how a mind that is not able to process language is creating such an impact around us. Dyslexic edge. Global studies have shown that students with dyslexia perform really well and have the skills of the future, which is visualizing, innovating, communicating, reasoning, connecting the dots, looking at the bigger picture and solving for the future. These are the students who will be able to create innovations that's going to lead mankind forward. A lot of universities around us globally are attracting these students because of the similar reason. It's so common in MIT that that it's also called the MIT disease. And now we have to understand what is our country doing to be able to tap into this critical pool of dyslexic thinkers. The Rights of Persons with Disability Act in 2016 for the first time formally recognized this, and it mandates 5% reservation for people with disabilities in any government or government aided institute. The new education policy is in consonance with the RPWD Act, and it focuses on providing equitable access and quality education to all students with disability, including with specific learning disability, from their early years till their foundational stages. And therefore, the higher education institutes now need to focus on creating a high support environment for students with disability, inclusive of students with specific learning disability.